Good morning. Good morning. This is Scott Allen. I am broadcasting to you live from the home studios here in San Angelo on this Good Friday. And I'm so glad to see all of you. Although right now I don't have anybody here yet. Let's see who is the very first person who comes on. And the first person. Oh, I don't have anybody yet. Nobody has. All right, well, hey, I guess I've got some people showing up. Good job. Um, it's a good day today. I hope that you all have been able to sleep in a little bit. We've got, I would say, an opportunity on our hands today to rest a little bit. Good morning, Sue. Good to see you guys. Sue's our first commenter. Hey, that makes 2 times this week, Sue. Good job for you. Good morning, Shirley and Janet, Darlene and Diane. Hey, Nellie, how are you? Trying to get a little set up. So the kids are still asleep. So if you see someone from this area slowly poke their head in with hair going everywhere, that's probably my son, and he'll be a little embarrassed. But I have a feeling he's going to sleep right through it. So I wouldn't worry about that. Good morning, Jess. How are you? So good to see everybody. And for those of you who are watching this on replay, good afternoon or good evening or whatever time of day it is that you're watching. All right. Well, this time of the year is always, I'm not going to say emotional. It is emotional for me, but it's more of it's for me. It's a time of reflection, and I would say that at this time of the year, everything's heightened for me. So the joy is really joyful. Laughter is really laughing. I mean, it's good, and when things are difficult, it's really difficult. And I decided a long time ago that I was going to be very intentional during this week leading up to Jesus' death and resurrection, that I would do my best, at least this one week, to continually think about Jesus throughout the week and what he was going through, what he did, how he must have been feeling. And so, it's kind of interesting to me. I woke up this morning and my first thought was, I wonder what was going through people's minds whenever they woke up on that Friday morning. We'll go over that in just a second, but just want to make sure everybody has a chance to get on here. Good morning. Hey, good morning, Julie. And Sharon and Jackson, Abraham, Don. Nice. So good to see everybody. I'm going to do a poll here in a little bit, but I'm going to try something else too, because I'm going to be posting a couple of pictures in the comments section, and I'm going to see if it works. I don't know if it will, but it kind of goes along with what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and get right into it. It is Good Friday, and so if you remember, yesterday we talked about the Last Supper. We talked about the Passover meal. We didn't get into full detail about every element, but we did talk about, some of the symbology in it all. And the Passover meal has been something they've been doing since they left Egypt. It's very symbolic. Lots of different aspects to this meal help them remember their story. And so this was no different. These Passover meals would have gone late into the evening, 10, 11, some even midnight. It just depends on how big your family is and how much fun you're having. And it is fun. You tell the story of Passover through this meal. You tell it to your children. Your children get a chance to stay up late, and it's exciting. But Jesus and his apostles, his friends, they went to the Garden of Gethsemane. And they left, they had their meal, they sung a hymn, and then they went out to the garden. It's probably the wee hours of the morning. So the Garden of Gethsemane is really right across from the from the eastern wall. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can post this in the section. I don't know if this is possible. I'm going to try this really quick. I don't even know if this is possible. Let's see if I can do this. I can. If I can't, I apologize. I'll just describe it to you. Okay, so the garden is right outside the eastern wall. If you look at the eastern wall, there's a wall, then there's a little valley, and it goes right up to the Mount of Olives. So the Mount of Olives, where Jesus would have been, is directly across from the eastern wall, and you can see the eastern gate. And the eastern gate is where people that was very heavily traveled back then. Currently, the eastern gate is walled off. It is sealed shut. It is Muslim controlled, and the story is that the Messiah for the Jews will come through the eastern gate, and so at some point during the history, during this Jew and Islamic battling, fighting as they've always done. Somebody had the great idea, we're just going to seal this gate shut. Well, Jesus already went through the eastern gate when he was, entering for this triumphal entry. But now it's sealed shut. But back then, Jesus was outside in this Mount of Olives praying with his apostles. And you can see the gate, and the way it doesn't just have a road going straight down. The road kind of zigzags down, and then goes through the valley, and it comes right up to the Mount of Olives. So I just imagine as Jesus is praying, he's praying, and I imagine he can see the torches. He can see the men walking down, zigzagging across, knowing they're coming for him. And so imagine that weight, that heaviness, that impending doom there. So I want to ask you something. This is my poll question. Are you ready? See if I can go ahead and publish it. The question is, what does Gethsemane mean? Some of you already know this. What does Gethsemane mean? Place of trouble, restful, oil press, or place of peace? I'm going to give you a few moments to answer that question. See how you can answer it. The garden was something that it was at that point, who knows? It was probably a garden that somebody owned. I don't think it was a public place. A lot of these gardens and vineyards, not a lot of them had walls around them. You just kind of had to socially distance yourself, or you could just go in and enjoy it. I don't really know exactly, but I do know that Jesus and his apostles probably went there often. It was probably one of those places that they liked. Let's see where you are here. How many people have I published this? Oh, there you go. Sorry about that. What does Gethsemane mean? There you go. It should be right there. A place of trouble, restful, oil press, or place of peace. Okay, Sue says place of peace. Judy and Paul, oil press. Pretty good. Let's see. Who else? All right, I'll give you another minute or so. We have 7 people that say place of peace. One person says restful. One says oil press. I'll give you another second. We're going to kind of go through a couple of things that happened on this Good Friday. And hey, Andrew Paclaber, how you doing, brother? It's good to see you, man. I hadn't seen you in a while. How's the DFW area, my friend? Okay, so Gethsemane. All right, I'm going to go ahead and publish this just to see where you guys are. Okay, the word means oil press. That's actually what it means, oil press.
Well, I apologize for that. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a second because I lost my stream. I have no idea how that happened. All right, apologize. Let's go ahead and start this again. Several of you were booted off, and I apologize for that. I had an error. So, okay. So this is part two. I'm going to go ahead and continue on here. Um, the structure had become corrupt, and the high priest had kind of, bought his way into this position of power. And so he served for about 9 years. And then after that, they were kind of starting to appoint different high priests kind of willy nilly. They were just going one. Sometimes they even served a couple of months. Sometimes it was like a year. But it was it wasn't consistent, and it was a little bit corrupt. So some people actually uh, referred to Annas as kind of the godfather, and even went so far as to say that this high priesthood, that this whole priestly line had become more like a syndicate, like I'm not going to say mafia, but they were very controlling of the money, the temple money. It was a business, a big business, and so whenever somebody comes in threatening all of that, everything goes crazy. So in John chapter 11, verse 48, it says, the chief priests, verse 47, John chapter 11, the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. He says, "What are we accomplishing?" They asked. "Here's the man performing many miraculous signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." So they're a little bit intimidated here because this man could upend everything that they've been trying to do. And so there was a concerted effort, not just to say this man is lying. I mean, this man was about to threaten their income stream, and so they wanted to find a way to get him out. And so Gethsemane is where Jesus is. The actual word is Get Shemanim, Gat Shemanim, the oil press, the place of the oil press, place where olives are pressed. Um, the trial was rushed. It was really Jesus being moved to several different places. He went to Caiaphas's house, then, which actually there's a place, if you go to Israel, there's actually a house that they think was Caiaphas's house, and in there you can see several different rooms, and on the top of these rooms there are stones, like stone headers, and there's holes in there they were places for ropes. So you would actually, be um, kept in chains or in ropes or whatever. And so there is a thought that that's where Jesus could have been as he awaited trial. So what they did was they moved him there. Then they took him to Pilate. Pilate sent him over to Herod. Herod sent him back to Caiaphas. And so Jesus is going from place to place. And although it's not really far to each place, it wasn't a quick little jaunt either. And I'm sure he was getting pushed and beat. And so the man is tired. He has spent the entire evening being yelled at, being spit on, being cursed at, being moved about, being beat. And so here he is finally, as people are waking up. They see this man who is, beaten and bloodied and bruised. Um, so Peter, here's another thing that's interesting. Peter, you remember that moment whenever he found his way into the courtyard. Well, they say that James or John they probably knew the family of the high priest. And so the courtyard, you couldn't just go into the courtyard. I mean, the courtyard was part of this property. And so Peter had found his way in here at some point, trying to stay close to Jesus, to figure out maybe to just be close. He found his way in probably because he was let in. So all the people that are around there, specifically the ones who recognize him, saying, "You're the man, right? You were with him." And Peter's saying no, and he has this moment of denial 3 times. those aren't just random people. Those are people who are probably part of the servants, the family, close friends of the high priests, and so these are people whose livelihood were also going to get threatened if Jesus took control, and he actually was the Messiah that they thought he might be. Um, so here we have this moment whenever Jesus is being crucified, or Jesus was being convicted, and it's early in the morning, probably between 7 and 9 at some point, and people are yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him!" And if you look at Matthew, I think it's in Matthew, is the one where Matthew's more specific. If you read Matthew, he never really paints the religious leaders in a positive light, really at all. John at least gives Nicodemus a voice. He gives them a voice saying, there are those who are really wanting to know, and there are those who are trying to understand, and they did believe. Matthew, he didn't have a lot of respect for these Jewish leaders, and you kind of see that in his writing. So he says in Matthew 26, he's very clear about it. Matthew 26, verses, let's see, where's that? Whenever they were talking about, it's chapter 27, verse 20. He says, "But the chief priests and elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas to have Jesus executed." And so they were persuading and basically telling these people, ask for Barabbas. Because if you remember, Pilate was saying, which do you want? Jesus, he's not done anything, or Barabbas, this murderer? And they all persuaded the crowd to choose Barabbas. And that's what happens. And that's why Jesus was chosen as the one to be crucified. Pilate didn't want to have anything to do with it. He washed his hands of the whole thing. He really just said, listen, I just want to make sure you guys aren't going to riot. So Jesus is led through the town. He's carrying his cross, and he's crucified with two people. And these are known as criminals, is how they're noticed. Some people will say that they're robbers or thieves. We hear thieves on the cross. In that day and age, they probably wouldn't have just crucified a thief or even just common criminal. They would have done something else. They would have, at the worst, they would have just sold them to slavery or something to repay their debt. But what they did is these were the people who they deserved it. Because he even says on the cross, as the other guys hurling insults at Jesus, the one criminal on the cross says, "Listen, you and I are here because we deserve what we get." But he's not. He doesn't deserve this. So who were they? Well, they were probably rebels or insurgents, jihadists. They could have been zealots. They could have been people who were trying to overthrow, the power, and they killed some Romans. You don't know, but they weren't common criminals. And some people even look at these two men as kind of representatives of the two Israels. You have one Israel who was going to come to Jesus, who was, as Paul says, not everybody born of Abraham is of Israel. It's those people who are really believing that Jesus is the Messiah of the world. That's the true Israel. I don't know if that's really true, but it's interesting to think about that you have one on this side, one on this side, two Israels who are so close to Jesus, and one chooses to believe, just asks for mercy, and the other one, continues and stays in his own sin. During that time, what you have is it is Passover, remember, and so on that Friday, you had so many people heading to the temple. They were bringing sacrifices. They were ready to do what they needed to do so that they could have sins forgiven. They could just fulfill the routine and the rituals. And during the Passover, and I've said this in our church service, during the Passover, they had the very first lamb that was slain. And that kind of kick-started this entire day of sacrifice. And so around 3:00, you would have the very first lamb sacrificed. And it was a big event. And so whenever that first lamb was sacrificed, there was a priest who was elevated. So I don't know if he's on a wall, he was where exactly he was, but he was at a place where everyone could hear him, and he has a shofar. It's like a ram's horn, very long. Depends on how they use that, and I don't know exactly what kind he was using, but typically, whenever that first lamb was slain, they would blow the shofar, and it would be loud enough to where people could hear it, and the celebration and this moment of sacrifice began. And it wasn't this hooray, but it was just meaning that good, we are being forgiven. It was this feel, this moment of gratitude, and so it says that Jesus, between probably 9 and noon, probably he was there on the cross for around 6 hours, and around 3 o'clock is when he died. And what John likes to do in his gospel is he really likes to say 3 o'clock is the exact same time that this lamb was slain. And so in that same moment, as Jesus is dying on the cross, as he's being sacrificed, the shofar is being blown because the lamb has been slain. And it's a beautiful moment, but it's a little bit I don't know, it gives me chills when I think about it because Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. And a lot of people wonder why Jesus had to suffer. And I just wanted to end with this. This is Isaiah chapter 53. We have heard this before, but this is a prophetic chapter, that Isaiah read a long time ago, that he wrote a long time ago. And I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of it. Isaiah 53, who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering, like one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We, all like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken, and who could speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. He was assigned a grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death, and was numbered with the transgressors. For he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. This was written how many hundreds of years before this moment? God had had this plan for a long time. This was his plan. But what I love is that in 54, right after that, there's this hope for a future. And I'll just read a couple of snippets from it. It says, 54:1, sing, O barren woman, you who never bore a child, burst into song, shout for joy, you who are never in labor, because more are the children of the desolate woman than of her who has a husband. He says, do not be afraid, verse 4. You will not suffer shame. Do not fear disgrace. You will not be humiliated. You will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood, for your Maker is your husband. The Lord Almighty is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth. The Lord will call you back. And moving over in verse 9, verse 8, he says, but with everlasting kindness, I will have compassion on you, says the Lord your Redeemer. In verse 9, to me, this is like the days of Noah, when I swore to the waters that Noah would never again cover the earth. When I swore that the waters of Noah would never again cover the earth. So now I have sworn not to be angry with you, never to rebuke you again. Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love, that's the word chesed, unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor my covenant of peace be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. I love that, because as there is suffering, the plan of God is that the suffering of his anointed one will create the way for future hope, prosperity, love, joy, compassion, redemption, ultimate salvation for all who believe. So it's difficult Friday, but for us, we know it's good because we know the rest of the story. But as you move into the day, I just want to encourage you, move in, lean into this day with a little bit of somberness, with a little bit of empathy for those people who had to endure this, watching their friend, their leader, their son, their brother go through such pain and agony. But you need to remember, Sunday's coming. Today we're going to have a Good Friday service. It's going to be at 3 o'clock. It's going to be live streamed on Facebook and YouTube. And we'd love it if you can join us, share it to as many people as you can. It's about 30 minutes long. And hopefully it'll just kind of help you stay in a moment of reflection. So God be with you. I'm going to pray for you, and then I'm going to hang out and kind of talk with you a little bit. All right, God, thank you so much for the day. Thank you for this time to remember. I pray that you would help us as we move into this weekend, Lord, to really enjoy our family, enjoy the blessings you've given us. Lord, help us to be grateful and thankful. And in those moments, whenever we would be selfish, whenever we are trying to just demand our way, help us to remember that Jesus didn't demand his way. He was surrounded by people who wanted the worst for him. He was surrounded by people who didn't understand. He was surrounded by people who they had little idea of just exactly who he was. Lord, help us in that moment, whenever we want to demand our way. Lord, help us to give instead, to consider the other person, because Jesus, even in that difficult moment where he wanted this cup to pass, he asked and just told God, he says, whatever your will is. So help us to be that way too. Give us a good weekend, and I pray that you would help us to share our faith. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys very much for watching. God be with you. And hopefully next time we won't cut out halfway through. I apologize for that. We'll talk to you soon. All right, thanks. I'm going to hang out a little bit. All right. Hey, good morning, Gene. All right. Let's see who else is here. Yeah, people are late. I apologize. There's a first part to this, and I'm going to see what I can do to kind of put these two things together and just post them both on YouTube and right here. I'll have to do a little bit of editing, but that'll be okay. Let's see here. Anybody else? I'm going to be... Shelly's right here. Shelly's doing her work. She's right behind me. I would show you her, but she is diligently working for her kids right here. All right. Well, seems that this has been a little bit disrupted today. So I'll just say God be with you guys, and I will see you on Sunday morning live on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere where we stream. Share our service, share your faith, and be a light. God bless. Bye.